Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the new live-action Snow White movie. I personally enjoyed this movie. I made my out-of-theater reaction. A lot of people have had a lot to say about it. So, in this video, we're going to be kind of defending it because, for the most part, I did enjoy this movie. So, let's dive into it, shall we?
Modern Movie Review.
Okay, so I do want to go ahead and kind of address a couple of biases that I have that might make it where I enjoyed this movie more than the average film goer will, because at the end of the day, movies are subjective. It is an art form, and some people are going to appreciate different arts differently based off of their personal preferences and things that they've experienced throughout their life. So I am going to go ahead and start off by saying I'm a huge fan of musicals. If you have music in a movie and the music is good, I'm going to enjoy it a little bit more. I think that music is a good cheat code, and when it's a movie like this, where the original Snow White has a couple of songs, but they're not anything that are really that iconic or that interesting to me, being able to see a different side of these characters and being able to see more expanded upon songs. And I just think that a lot of the music in this movie is really good, and especially some of the original ones that they make, like Princess Problems is a very modern musical song, and I really liked it. I liked the sound of it. I think that the choreography is really good. So if you're not a fan of musicals, you might not enjoy this as much as I do. But as far as I'm concerned, a lot of the really boring stuff that happens in this movie is very heavily outweighed by those very fun, upbeat musical numbers. So I kind of made a list of pros and cons, and we're kind of going to go through them. One pro, one con, one pro, one con, because for the most part, I think that this movie is a good movie. I've said that I really enjoyed it, and I do really enjoy it, but I think that it's one of those, like, I'd give this like 3 stars out of 5 stars, because it's a good movie. I have a good time with it. There's definitely a lot wrong with it, but I think that the good things just very much outweigh the bad. So let's dive into this, shall we? So the first pro that I want to talk about, the one positive thing that I really absolutely love about this movie, which apparently might be a controversial thing, I think that Rachel Zegler is absolutely incredible in this. I am a really big fan of hers. I think that every single movie she has been in, she has been arguably the best part of that film, and this movie is no different. I think that her acting performance in here is absolutely incredible. She does a good job of really fleshing out a character that in the original Snow White doesn't have a whole lot to do. She doesn't have a lot of different character traits, and because of it, she kind of feels like a little derivative sometimes. Like, they have moments where it's like, oh, she kind of feels like Cinderella in this scene, and oh, she kind of feels like Belle from Beauty and the Beast in this scene. But Rachel Zegler really does a good job of showcasing that compassion that a Disney princess should have, and I think for the most part, her work ethic and everything is really good. I like the fact that this character feels like somebody who actually was born to be a leader, but has just kind of been a little timid and scared to get to the point of actually leading. They've been having a hard time standing up to the evil queen, and I think that the way that she builds that courage throughout this movie is interesting. I think that they do a really good job portraying it, and Rachel Zegler's voice is absolutely incredible. Songs like Waiting on a Wish, I think that's the name of the song, absolutely phenomenal, and I think it really works really, really well with her voice, her vocal register, and for the most part, she does a great job performing them as well, because her singing in this movie is great. The choreography, like I mentioned earlier, is also really good for a lot of these musical numbers, so I had a really good time with this. But now for a con, if we're going to be saying Rachel Zegler is a pro of this movie, it is undoubtable that the biggest con that this movie has is having Gal Gadot being the actress who's going against her. I think that Gal Gadot brings an incredibly stale performance to a character that's already not very interesting. I think for the most part, the evil queen struggles with an issue of, this person is evil. Why are they evil? Just because they can be. They're greedy. They're somebody who wants to be the best. And the whole, like, motivation of, okay, well, I'm going to talk to this magic mirror, and this magic mirror is going to tell me I'm hot. And if they don't tell me I'm the hottest, then I'm going to throw a bitch fit. It's not that interesting. It's not that compelling. And when you have an actress that isn't doing a whole lot to really sell this character on, like, that greed and that just jealousy, it's not that interesting. I think for the most part, she doesn't bring any range to this role. Like, I feel like there's a lot of anger that could have been brought out of the Evil Queen that would have made it a lot better. Just did not work very well for me. And then another thing, they give her own solo in this movie, and the choreography for it is okay, but it's very, like, poppy and, like, pop princess, and she's supposed to be, like, a very elegant, like, I am the most beautiful of the land, I have all of these riches, I have all of these gems and these diamonds and these emeralds and stuff. So it should feel very glamorous, and it just doesn't. It feels like a very generic pop song you would hear at the background of, like, a mall or something. So overall, I think that this movie struggles with having a protagonist that is incredible, played by an incredible actress, and an antagonist that isn't that interesting and is honestly not very compelling. So overall, those really do have a rough time of kind of balancing each other out. But at the end of the day, Gal Gadot's screen time is about 15 minutes, whereas Rachel Zegler's is over an hour. So it's definitely a lot more enjoyable, the amount of time we get to spend with Rachel Zegler as this character. I think she did a phenomenal job. So overall, those first pros, I think that pro and that con, the pro definitely outweighs But now for the second pro, I want to go ahead and say that the visuals look fantastic. I think that for the most part, a lot of people have been freaking out about the dwarves, and they're like, oh my god, why did they make them CGI? They look so ridiculous. They look really stupid. Hey guys, these are creatures, like fantasy little magical creatures that have been alive for 275 years. Their job is mining in the most like magical minecart field place ever, and they're collecting an ungodly amount of like the most precious minerals in the world, and they would be incredibly rich if they actually were doing stuff with their mining job. It's really weird. They don't do anything to really flesh out the dwarves and make it make sense why they're doing the things that they're doing. But for the most part, I think that all the complaints about like, oh, they look super unrealistic, good. They should. They're mystical beings. They shouldn't necessarily look natural. And I think for the most part, they look as good as they need to. I think that it's very passable. It doesn't take me out of the movie at all. And for the most part, I really like Dopey. I think that Dopey looks incredibly good. And I think for the most part, they do a great job of having the enchanted forest that they live in feel incredibly colorful. And I think that that's one of my favorite things about this movie is it does a really good job of feeling like a fairy tale. Once she goes into the woods, that entire monotone, gray, boring feeling that we get in the first act of this movie completely goes away, and it does feel like a lot better of a movie, and it definitely feels very colorful, very vibrant, and just genuinely a whimsical, fun time. But now one con that I do have to bring up, the village that they live in is very beige, very black and white, and it's not very interesting. I think that it's very dull, and for the most part, that kind of makes sense towards the end of the movie because, like, the evil queen has taken away all of the passion and all of the joy from the people who live in the village. But in the beginning of this movie, it also still feels very gray. Like, they'll have a couple of sequences, like the opening scene, they have a musical number where it's Snow White and her parents, and they're, like, celebrating, and they're, like, you know, having, like, kind of a farmer's market of sorts, but, like, they're, you know, bringing pies to people, and everybody in the town is just, you know, being one big family, and it's this really beautiful moment, and that's colorful. But immediately after that, all of the color and joy in the village absolutely sucks. I think that the castle is a set that looks like it could have been really good, but for some reason it feels mostly green screened, and I think that that's another complaint that I have about this movie. It feels relatively cheap in comparison to some of the other live actions. I think that aside from the costuming, which is absolutely phenomenal, a lot of the stuff like them being out in the woods and them, you know, being attacked by the guards or whatever, none of those action sequences feel that lived in. It feels very fake. It feels very artificial. And I don't like the fact that a lot of it feels like it was done on a green screen as opposed to actually in a practical set somewhere. Same thing about a lot of the castle sequences. It feels very dull. It feels very lifeless. And it feels just overall very boring. But like I said, you're not in that for the majority of this movie. You're in that for the first like 10-15 minutes. There's some dialogue that's very iffy, and then we go on to Snow White being driven to go into the forest and her going on her little adventure, and that's where things really pick up. So once again, this is a con that you get over it if you just watch the movie. You get 10-15 minutes into this movie and you will have a much better time. It starts really slow. It starts really rough, but I think that it is what it is. Okay, then I got two last things. I got one last pro and one last con, and I'm going to go ahead and say this. The pro is that the love story in this movie actually absolutely works. I think that something that a lot of these Disney live actions have done an incredible job with over the years is enhancing a love story where back in the day, I was a little boy watching all of these Disney princess movies, and it always sucked when you would watch the Disney prince or princess, well, the prince, and it's like, okay, well, this is just Prince Charming. Well, what character traits does he have? Nothing. He's just attractive. He's rich, he lives in this palace, and so, like, the girls will end up falling in love with him. And it's like, aside from, like, the Beast and maybe Tarzan, technically, we didn't have a whole lot of different Disney princes who had personalities, who had a lot going on for them, that were actually, like, interesting characters and people who are developed. And for the most part, a lot of times I would watch some of these movies, and it really did just feel like, okay, well, women just fall in love with men because men are hot. And that's essentially what it felt like to me. So being able to go from that to they end up falling in love a little bit more naturally because this man is willing to, you know, sacrifice himself for her, and he's willing to, you know, put himself at risk whenever the guards come to come get her. He's like, hey, you gotta run, we'll protect you, we'll catch you, we'll make sure that you're safe. That's great. I think that works incredibly well. I think that the fact that he's very compassionate and he wants to do as much as he can to help out the village when the queen themselves won't is really good. And I think for the most part, they do a great job of building that chemistry. I think that a love story between Jonathan and Snow White in this movie is absolutely phenomenal. And I really, really enjoy it. And I think that they do a great job of building it up. One con, necrophilia was still in this movie. You didn't have to do that. You did not have to do that. I understand, like, the whole point is like, oh, well, here's this poison apple. You take a bite of the poison apple. The only way to cure it is a true love's kiss. Yeah, but she's dead. and she's just laying there, and he goes up and kisses her on the lips. I understand it's a beautiful moment, it's an iconic moment. He should have kissed her on the forehead, and then when she came back to life, then they could have had an actual kiss, because that's essentially what they did anyways. I thought that that was not great. And then the one last complaint that I had about this movie, the ending felt very anticlimactic, and it did feel relatively rushed. Once again, I'm mostly here for the musical scenes and the choreography. That didn't bother me that much. I think that when this movie needed to end, they pretty much were just like, well, we're going to quickly make the queen go bye-bye, and then the palace is ours now, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be ran by Snow White, and she's going to be a much better leader, and that's fantastic. So I enjoyed it. I think that it was a good time. I think that there's definitely a lot to dislike about this movie, and I understand that complaint, but I will also say that a lot of people are just looking at this movie at face value, not even giving it a chance, and before it even comes out, or they have a chance to go watch it, saying that they don't like it, and I think that that's just wrong. I think it's a good movie. I think that there's a lot of very great laugh-out-loud moments in it. Like I mentioned, I don't typically laugh out loud when I'm watching movies in the theaters, unless something is really funny. And there were a couple of moments that I thought were really funny. I think that the Jonathan character in this is absolutely hilarious. There's a couple of moments with the Seven Dwarfs that are really good. I think Doc in particular made me laugh out loud like 3 separate times. So there's a lot to like about this movie. And I just hate the fact that so many people are brushing it off immediately because they hate the casting, or they hate the fact that the dwarves are animated and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's a movie for kids. Kids are going to love it. And I think that that's great. I think that Disney did a relatively good job with this one. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow.